With Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 right around the corner. Finally. Seriously, I've had this game pre-ordered for 6.5 years. I, Suggestive Gaming, figured it would be a great time to sink my teeth into the story of the 2004 original. Now, the important thing to note about Bloodlines is that it takes place within the world of the tabletop role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade, which itself is part of the larger World of Darkness universe. While I'm going to pull in a lot of context and background story from the World of Darkness canon, this video is going to focus solely on the narrative of the first Bloodline game's main questline, breezing over most side quests. While I would absolutely love to dive into the World of Darkness series at large, that's out of scope for this video, but something I'd love to do in the future if there's enough interest. As my own introduction to World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade back when I first played it ages ago, I can attest that Bloodlines is a great first step into the universe, so I don't think there'll be an issue. Also, starting in 2018, Bloodlines got a follow-up story in the form of LA by Night, a podcast-style web series playing through a tabletop campaign taking place after the game's story. It's 5 seasons of content that I'll very briefly cover, mostly regarding returning characters, but I simply can't give its storyline the full coverage it deserves using my format. Additionally, the LA by Night story got a follow-up called NY by Night, but spiraling down that hole would just lead me to have to cover more and more Vampire the Masquerade properties. If my synopsis gets you interested, I strongly urge you to go check out the full campaigns, and I'll leave a link in the description to make it easy. Speaking of links in the description, you should also check out the amazing mods that I used to make this video. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines has basically been kept alive and continuously improved for over 20 years by developer Wesp5 and his unofficial patch, which not only aims to fix the game's various bugs and issues, but also optionally adds a plethora of cut and missing content from the original release. I cannot implore you enough to play the game not only with these patches, but to try out each individually to see how much work has truly gone into expanding the experience for those of us who are still enjoying Bloodlines to this very day. I'll be using the basic patch in this video to keep things as close to the original release in terms of story, but that bonus patch really is something to enjoy. I'm also using a visual mod in this video developed by author SafeMilk, which adds new models, textures, and completely redone lighting using NVIDIA's RTX Remix tools. While the mod is still in its infancy, and unfortunately still very, very buggy, I can't help but use it in this video to show off SafeMilk's amazing work. Please excuse any visual bugs and glitches throughout, because just look at how beautiful these comparisons are. I cannot get over how much love the Bloodlines community has continued to pour into this game over the past 2 decades, so please check out the links in the description and try them out to see just how amazing the continued work has been. Now, without further ado, this is what you need to know about the main storyline of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Our story begins in October of 2004, where we find our protagonist, whose identity depends on their created character sheet. Regardless, this seemingly normal human brings a date to a hotel room in Santa Monica, California. Unbeknownst to them, their date turns out to be a blood-sucking, sun-fearing, honest-to-goodness vampire, who offers to show them something. The vampire proceeds to turn the human through a process called the Embrace, effectively killing them before reviving them as a fledgling vampire. As the fledgling painfully tries to come to grips with their new existence, the 2 vampires are suddenly and forcefully interrupted when someone bursts into the room and immediately impales both of them with wooden stakes, incapacitating them. When the fledgling later awakens, they find themselves captive on stage alongside their sire, or creator. There, within the Nocturne Theater in downtown Los Angeles, Prince Sebastian LaCroix of the Camarilla sect of vampires addresses a crowd of gathered kindred, or fellow vampires, to explain the situation. While the laws that bind their vampiric society state that any vampires must seek his permission before creating a new one, the fledgling on stage wasn't created with such permission. As such, LaCroix orders his massive sheriff to swiftly behead the newly made sire, ending their immortality instantly in an event referred to as Final Death. Left to determine the fate of their progeny, LaCroix's speech is interrupted by Nines Rodriguez, the leader of the Anarchs faction of local vampires, who is quick to point out his disagreement with the Camarilla's rules. Prince LaCroix finishes by stating that he'll allow the new kindred to live, though they'll need to be sufficiently trained in the ways of their kind. After the prince calls the meeting to a close, he speaks with the fledgling kindred and provides them with their first task for the Camarilla as a vampire: go to Santa Monica to speak with one of their human agents named Mercurio. The prince then leaves the fledgling in the care of legendary anarch Smiling Jack, who teaches them about their new physiological requirements, like feeding blood from human victims and supernatural abilities. More importantly, Jack informs the fledgling about the Masquerade, a group of rules and regulations the vampiric society agree to follow in order to keep their existence a secret from humankind, to prevent an uprising against them. Not all vampires feel this same way, however, as these traditions are opposed by another organization called the Sabbat, who are currently at war with the Camarilla in Los Angeles. The Sabbat fully embrace their creator, the original vampire, Cain, who was given the curse by God as punishment for murdering his brother, Abel. Believing that Cain will soon return as part of a vampire Armageddon called Gehenna, the Sabbat instead prepare for this event by building their numbers in the shadows while launching attacks on those who might stand in their way. One such attack quickly hits the theater, and as the Sabbat rush in, the fledgling quickly gets their bearings as Jack leads them to safety as he and the sheriff hold off the raid. After learning how to defend themselves in combat, the fledgling fights to safety before saying their goodbyes to Jack, at least for now, and catching a cab back to Santa Monica to begin their task for the Camarilla. After regrouping in a palatial apartment above a shady pawn shop provided to them by the Camarilla, the fledgling exits the complex to find a trail of blood leading to a neighboring one, where they spot a wounded man crawling inside. Following him, the fledgling learns that he's none other than the very man they were sent to meet, Mercurio. Speaking with the injured Mercurio, they learn that while he's human, he's an ally to the Camarilla, regularly drinking some of the prince's blood to become what's known as a ghoul. While ghouls have enhanced strength and halted aging, they're forced to drink the blood of their regnant at least once a month. Mercurio further states that he was injured after an ambush from gang members during a failed explosives deal. Instructed to get the explosives to use in an attack on a Sabbat warehouse, Mercurio asks the fledgling not to inform the prince about his failure, tasking them with retrieving the explosives, his money, and something for his pain. The fledgling heads to the gang's beach house, using their new skills to enter it and retrieve the explosives, as well as Mercurio's cash if they find its hiding spot. On their way back to Mercurio, if they choose to find something to ease his pain, the fledgling can enter a nearby medical clinic to search for the medicine. Inside, they can encounter a wounded woman named Heather Poe, and optionally save her life by offering her their own blood for her to drink, already making Heather their ghoul on their first night as a vampire. Returning to Mercurio, he informs the fledgling that a fellow vampire named Bertram Tongue, who specializes in infiltration, can help them get into the Sabbat warehouse to plant the explosives. Unfortunately, Tongue is currently in hiding thanks to a feud with Santa Monica's head vampire, Baroness Therese Foreman. The fledgling then heads to Therese's nightclub, the Asylum, to ask her to call off the feud to allow Tongue to resurface. After overhearing Therese argue with her twin sister, Jeanette, through their bedroom door above the club, the fledgling is allowed inside their room to find Therese alone. Therese agrees to put an end to her grievances with Tongue in exchange for the fledgling's help exorcising a spirit from a property she's looking to invest in. The fledgling heads off to the Ocean House Hotel, learning of one of its inhabitants, a jealous husband named Ed, who murdered his wife and their children after suspecting a pendant she received was a gift from an affair. After avoiding the still vengeful spirit while exploring the hotel, the fledgling retrieves the pendant, which the spirit is tied to, and they take it back to the asylum. Inside, however, the fledgling doesn't find Therese, instead meeting Jeanette face to face. Jeanette potentially takes the pendant herself, but either way she sends the fledgling on a favor of her own, trashing a charity event at the nearby Gallery Noir. After getting inside the gallery, the fledgling slashes paintings depicting Kane's story, before a Blood Guardian appears and attacks, forcing our hero into a supernatural battle to defeat it. Returning to Therese, the fledgling finds the Baroness furious at them for assisting her sister, revealing that the art show was actually her event.
Whoops!
With the sisters now warring, Therese tasks the fledgling with meeting her sister at a nearby diner to talk her down. However, when they get there, the fledgling finds an ambush waiting for them instead. After fighting off their attackers, a nearby payphone rings, and they answer it to find Therese on the other end, claiming Jeanette sent the men to kill them. They then hear Jeanette's voice on the other end, screaming for their help, prompting them to rush back to the asylum to see what's going on. There, the fledgling enters the sisters' room to find a shocking revelation. The two sisters are actually one in the same. As it turns out, Jeanette is actually another personality that's existed within Therese since she was a little girl. The fledgling finds the women holding a pistol, with each personality threatening to kill the other. At this point, the fledgling can convince one to eliminate the other, or convince them to forgive each other to keep working together. No matter the outcome, although canonically they both survive, the feud with Bertram Tongue is called off, and the fledgling finally finds and meets with him. After speaking with the Nosferatu, a clan of vampires left so disfigured that they're forced to live in the shadows lest they break the Masquerade, the fledgling heads off with his help to infiltrate the Sabbat warehouse. They somehow get inside, either stealthily or not so stealthily, and arm the explosives, escaping just before the warehouse is blown up. As they leave, however, they're met by another legendary vampire named Beckett. Beckett, who can transform into a wolf, has arrived in Los Angeles after hearing reports of something unusual in the night air. With their meeting merely a coincidence, Beckett leaves the fledgling to return to Tongue, before heading downtown to report in with Prince LaCroix. Unfortunately, as soon as they arrive downtown, the fledgling is quickly attacked and knocked unconscious by the Sabbat. Luckily, their ambush is interrupted by Nines Rodriguez, who again steps in to assist the fledgling. After scaring off the Sabbat attackers, Nines speaks with the fledgling and invites them to the Last Round Bar, a local anarchist meeting spot, where they can hear the real story of what's going on. First, however, the fledgling stops to speak with Prince LaCroix in his Venture Tower, a play on the clan the prince belongs to, the Ventru. After reporting the successful warehouse explosion to LaCroix, the prince informs them about the Elizabeth Dane, a cargo ship that recently docked which is reported to contain the Ankaran sarcophagus, rumored to contain some kind of ancient kindred. LaCroix sends the fledgling to the dock to inspect the sarcophagus, learn what the police know about it, and collect the Dane's cargo manifest so he can see what else it's carrying. At the last round, the fledgling meets the local anarch's den mother, a woman named Damsel, as well as a kindred named Skelter, while also reuniting with Smiling Jack. They then rendezvous with Nines, who informs them that while the Camarilla claim all of those who follow the Masquerade as their own, the Anarchs have refused their rule, establishing the Anarch-free state within California. He leaves them with a warning not to trust the Camarilla, especially not Prince LaCroix, before the fledgling heads off to find the Elizabeth Dane. Around this time, they receive an invitation from a kindred named Maximilian Strauss, leader of the city's Tremere clan of vampires. They meet him and potentially work with him investigating a bloodborne plague among vampires, before ultimately continuing their mission. They also run into Heather Poe once again, who tracked them down due to an insatiable urge to feel the way she did when she drank the fledgling's blood. Heather potentially moves in with the fledgling, providing cash, blood, and other gifts for their regnant. The fledgling soon makes their way onto the Elizabeth Dane, and they explore the vessel to find the Ankaran sarcophagus, which is surprisingly closed off as a crime scene. With blood covering the ship's deck, the fledgling notices bloody handprints indicating the ancient casket was opened from within, before being sealed again. They also steal the police officer's notes and the ship's manifest before bringing them both back to Prince LaCroix at his tower. There, the fledgling arrives just as a meeting with other local kindred is wrapping up. LaCroix informs them that the group reported a local vampire of the mentally deranged Malkavian clan, Dr. Alistair Grout, has gone missing, and he sends the fledgling to swiftly go investigate his mansion in the Hollywood Hills. As they approach the mansion, the fledgling surprisingly encounters Nines Rodriguez walking out, acting very strangely. While Nines warns them not to go inside, they nonetheless enter, immediately encountering hostile ghouls that they're forced to fight off. Exploring the mansion of the insanely paranoid doctor, the fledgling is forced to solve reality-bending puzzles to eventually reach Grout's bedroom. Unfortunately, inside, they simply find the remains of the late doctor, who has suffered final death thanks to a stake driven through his heart. After fighting and defeating an arriving vampire hunter named Grunfield Bach on their way out of the mansion, the fledgling returns to LaCroix to fill them in on the night's events. Unfortunately, Nines' appearance at the mansion just after Grout's death leaves him as the main suspect, and the prince considers placing a bounty on his head before sending the fledgling to retrieve the sarcophagus. Although the Camarilla doesn't believe the rumors that it contains an ancient third-generation vampire called an antediluvian, he nonetheless decides that whatever has the city's kindred so restless is probably best within their control. Learning that the sarcophagus was delivered to the Museum of Natural History, the fledgling infiltrates the building and locates its holding area. Unfortunately, they arrive to find that somebody has beaten them to the punch and already stole the Ankaran sarcophagus. They're surprised to find Beckett nearby once again, who explains that those who believe the sarcophagus to contain an antediluvian also believe that its release will begin to bring forth Gehenna. The fledgling again returns to Prince LaCroix to report their progress, learning that he's officially announced a blood hunt on Nines Rodriguez, calling for his execution and causing the Anarch to retreat into hiding. While LaCroix is infuriated to learn of the sarcophagus's theft, he quickly realizes the culprit must be Gorgeous Gary Golden, the leader of the Hollywood Nosferatu, who were tasked with figuring out where the sarcophagus was taken after it was retrieved from the Dane. The prince then sends the fledgling to Hollywood to track down Gary, warning them not to return without the sarcophagus. Unfortunately, Hollywood doesn't have many Camarilla allies, and it's instead run by Anarch Baron Isaac Abrams. The fledgling meets with Abrams, who welcomes them to his domain by requesting they pay tribute. Instead of asking for cash, however, Abrams asks them to retrieve a special videotape he purchased from an anonymous seller. Furthermore, since this tape circulation began, the city's Nosferatu have gone into hiding, so if the fledgling wants to find Gary, they'll have to figure out what power it seemingly holds over them. The fledgling goes to an internet cafe to find a message containing the location of the pickup spot. Unfortunately, it's not so easy, and they're forced to follow various clues from the tape's paranoid seller to eventually recover it from its stash location in the crypt of deceased actress Ginger Swan. During this time, the fledgling can optionally meet and assist kindred Velvet Velour, proprietor of the Vesuvius nightclub, specializing in adult entertainment. They can help her by eliminating a former employee whom she learned was secretly a vampire hunter, as well as stopping a screenwriter, David Hatter, from finishing a script which is awfully too close to reality, taking care of his kindred source as well. When the fledgling takes the tape back to Isaac, the pair watch it. To their horror, it contains a snuff film, in which monstrous creatures of unknown origin slaughter a woman in an abandoned house. The tape is incomplete, however, with the first half damaged and unwatchable. Hoping the complete copy will provide more context on the creatures, Abrams sends the fledgling to investigate the tape's credited production company, Death Mask Productions. Asking around, the fledgling learns that the tape has a bit of a reputation underground, and they eventually find their way to the production company's disturbing studio, located above the internet cafe all along. There, the fledgling is attacked by the strange creatures, but they fight through them to find a survivor, learning that Death Mask didn't actually produce the tape. They just found it in the abandoned house. Before they can get the location out of the survivor, however, he is mauled by one of the creatures. Luckily, the fledgling finds a complete copy of the tape and takes it back to Isaac, who recognizes an external shot of the house in the beginning. Believing whoever made the tape to be using these creatures to hound the Nosferatu, Abram sends the fledgling to the house to get to the bottom of the monstrous mystery. When they get to the house, the fledgling is forced to fight through more of the hostile creatures before they're met face to face with Andre, the Archbishop of the Los Angeles Sabbat. He reveals that the tape was simply a ploy to draw out the Camarilla. He also created the monsters, releasing them into the sewers to flush out the Nosferatu, crippling the Camarilla's intelligence to open them up for an attack. After a battle in which the fledgling somehow defeats this ages-old vampire, Andre retreats. The fledgling then returns to Isaac to fill him in on Andre's machinations. They then head into the Nosferatu sewer system, clearing it of any remaining monsters, and finally locating gorgeous Gary Golden. Luckily, Gary knows exactly where the Ankaran sarcophagus was taken, as he sold it. Following suit with everyone the fledgling has encountered since their embrace, Gary requires a favor before giving up the identity of the buyer. Gary explains that he recently sent an agent named Barabbas to Chinatown to do some reconnaissance, but he's since gone silent. Worried that the Kuei Jin, the vampires of the East but not quite kindred, might have something to do with his disappearance, Gary sends the fledgling to Chinatown to investigate. Once in Chinatown, the fledgling heads to the haven of the area's baroness, Ming Zhao. Entering the Golden Temple, they meet Ming Zhao, who, despite her aversion to local vampires, allows them to operate in the Kuei Jin territory. She recommends that they meet with Wong Ho, owner of the local Red Dragon restaurant, whom she figures will be a good place to start their search for Barabbas. As they exit the Golden Temple, the fledgling witnesses an apparent kidnapping, with a few men rushing off carrying a young woman. When they enter the Red Dragon and meet with Wong Ho, they learn that it was indeed a kidnapping, committed by the local Tong Street gang, with his daughter, Kiki, their captive. With Wong agreeing to help find Barabbas in exchange for his daughter's safety, the fledgling heads out to search for her. Luckily, Wong's associate Zhao has discovered Kiki's holding location, a local massage parlor called the Lotus Blossom. There, the fledgling finds and frees Kiki, even if she is less than thankful for their efforts. Returning to Wong, he reveals that while he can't actually help find Barabbas, he can point them in the direction of Zhao, whose skills should help locate the missing agent. The fledgling meets with Zhao at his company's warehouse, who reveals that while he doesn't know where Barabbas is, he does know that his disappearance is tied to the Tong. Knowing that their leader, Johnny, will be able to reveal the truth, Zhao gives the fledgling his location, a club called Glaze. Just as Zhao gives them the password to the club, however, his warehouse is stormed by Tong thugs, blasting their way in. The fledgling escapes the gunfire and soon finds Johnny in his office within the Glaze Club. However, during their conversation, a video transmission from a powerful figure known only as the Mandarin interrupts, instructing Johnny to kill the fledgling. When Johnny shoots them, however, he's shocked when the bullet seemingly has no effect. The Mandarin reveals that he knows the fledgling is undead, instructing them to instead dispose of Johnny, promising to discuss Barabbas' location afterward. Forced to take him out to protect the Masquerade, the fledgling follows the Mandarin's orders, taking out Johnny. They then head to the headquarters of the Fu Syndicate to meet with the Mandarin to discuss Barabbas' location. However, they quickly realize the meeting was a trap. As it turns out, the Fu Syndicate's purpose is to experiment on kindred, finding the most efficient ways to harm and kill them. One such test subject, the fledgling soon learns, was none other than Barabbas, and they go through the Mandarin's test chambers before managing to break free. They then fight through to the Mandarin, finally taking him out to stop his sick research. They then finally find Barabbas, luckily still alive, who helps hack into the Fu Syndicate servers to delete all of their research on vampires, striking a massive blow to protect the Masquerade. With Barabbas safe, Gary finally calls and tells the fledgling that he sold the information regarding the sarcophagus's location to the Giovanni family, a crime family of necromancer ghouls. As such, the Ankaran sarcophagus's current location is very likely the Giovanni's stronghold, their massive mansion. One way or another, the fledgling gets into the mansion, either through skill or, if you're impatient like me, excessive force. Diving below the mansion into a set of catacombs, the fledgling encounters a new kind of undead: zombies. Fighting through them, they eventually encounter the Chang brothers, two Kuei-Jin agents who reveal that Ming Zhao has an alliance with Prince LaCroix, one which the Kindred's presence currently violates. The brothers then attack, forcing the fledgling to fight, and ultimately subject them to final death. With no more obstacles in their way, the fledgling finally locates and recovers the Ankaran sarcophagus. After loading the sarcophagus into a truck, the fledgling delivers it to Prince LaCroix, who allows Beckett to study it. LaCroix vehemently denies any allegiance or involvement with Ming Zhao, accusing her of lying to attempt to sow the seeds of dissension amongst the Camarilla. Unfortunately, Beckett quickly discovers that the sarcophagus can't be opened, at least not with their current knowledge. Beckett determines that they should tap the archaeologist who uncovered the sarcophagus, Dr. Anders Johansson, to see if he knows how to open it. They're not the first ones to recognize Johansson's importance, however, as Beckett reports that he's already been abducted. Beckett tracks Johansson's scent to a monastery in Malibu, where the archaeologist is being held by the Society of Leopold, a vampire hunting group led by none other than Grunfeld Bach, who fought the fledgling a few minutes ago in this video. Beckett assumes that the hunters are using Johansson as bait to draw out LaCroix's minions, which proves to be a wise tactic considering the fledgling is forced to head to the monastery to search for the professor. They infiltrate the Society of Leopold's monastery, beginning their search for Dr. Anders Johansson. They're soon stopped by Bach, who springs his trap and pins them down with sniper fire. After another grueling battle, the fledgling defeats Grunfeld Bach once and for all. After the fight, the fledgling finds and rescues Johansson, who reveals that the sarcophagus's markings would indicate it contains the One-Eyed King, Messerak, an ancient monarch who conquered territories despite his advanced age. It also depicts that very same regal figure drinking the blood of his enemies, something Johansson attributes to an iron deficiency, refusing to believe in supernatural things like vampires. Furthermore, Johansson reveals that the Ankaran sarcophagus can only be opened with its matching key. Unfortunately, that went missing even before the sarcophagus did. As the pair go to escape, a barely surviving Bach crawls towards them and triggers an explosive timer. The fledgling and the archaeologist then rush to a boat to escape just before the blast destroys the monastery. As the fledgling returns to Venture Tower, they find the remnants of a siege on the building. Stepping over the corpses of the tower's security guards, they reach Prince LaCroix, who reveals that the attack was carried out by the Sabbat. With their threat to the Masquerade growing too strong, LaCroix instructs the fledgling to finally take down their leader in the city, Andre. Storming the Sabbat's haven, the Hollowbrook Hotel, the fledgling fights through their strongest defenses while searching for their leader. Sadly, during this attack, the fledgling can find Heather Poe, their potential ghoul, captured and subsequently murdered before their very eyes. Eventually, they're able to again confront and defeat Andre, this time after he transforms into a massive, beastly shape. With the Sabbat threat finally neutralized, the fledgling exits the hotel to find Ming Zhao waiting for them, claiming to come in peace. However, she does inform them that the arrangement she had with LaCroix, which she still insists was very much real, has now come to an end. Ming Zhao then makes a massive revelation. She was actually the one who killed Dr. Alistair Grout. Even more surprising, it was Prince LaCroix who called for the assassination, fearing that Grout stood in the way of his ambitions. Furthermore, the prince had Ming Zhao use her shape-shifting abilities to frame Nines Rodriguez, effectively killing 2 thorns in his side with 1 stone. Before leaving, Ming Zhao makes one last reveal. She knows where the key to the sarcophagus is, because she has it, locked up tightly within the Golden Temple. The fledgling returns to Prince LaCroix to fill him in once again. While LaCroix again denies any involvement in an agreement with Ming Zhao, still insisting it's just the Kuei Jin trying to divide and conquer, the knowledge of her being Grout's true killer leads him to call off the blood hunt against Nines. The fledgling then heads off to the last round to inform the Anarchs about this, also telling them about the Kuei Jin's attempt to frame their leader. While Damsel is thrown into a frenzy at both the Camarilla and the Kuei Jin, she tells the fledgling that she's got to stay behind to watch the bar, telling them that Nines is hiding out in the nearby Griffith Park. Hoping to get Nines to agree to an alliance with the Camarilla against the Kuei Jin, the fledgling heads to Griffith Park to search for him. After taking a cable car up to the observatory, they find Nines waiting outside. Rodriguez knows that the enemy of his enemy is at least temporarily his friend, and agrees to an alliance with the Camarilla. Unfortunately, during their discussion, a man-made forest fire starts, and the fire quickly attracts the attention of nearby werewolves. As the pair rush off to leave on the cable car, they spot it leaving the station without them. Forced to survive until its return, Nines is unfortunately immediately snatched and taken away by a werewolf. Another arrives shortly after and attacks the observatory while the fledgling waits for the cable car. At this point, they can potentially defeat the attacking beast, but either way, they ultimately get in the car and return to Griffith Park. There, an unlikely ally is awaiting them, Smiling Jack. Jack gets them back to their apartment before sunrise, revealing that while the fledgling was searching for Nines, LaCroix set him up. The prince put out word that it was actually the fledgling who was in league with the Kuei Jin. Even worse, he's called another blood hunt, this one on the fledgling. With Santa Monica crawling with Camarilla looking to complete the blood hunt, Jack has the fledgling sneak across the city to meet with the cab driver who has thus far helped them travel across Southern California. Once reaching the mysterious figure, who cryptically makes references to Kane, hinting at his potential true identity, our protagonist jumps in the backseat of his cab and drives off. During the cab ride, the fledgling is left to make their final decision on who they ultimately want to align themselves with. If they decide to side with the Anarchs, they meet up with a surviving Nines, who single-handedly bested his attacker, to discuss their plan. Otherwise, if they choose to repair their relationship with Prince LaCroix, they meet with him instead. Alternatively, the fledgling can decide to walk alone and side with no one. No matter which case, their next move is clear: obtaining the sarcophagus key from the Kuei Jin. If the fledgling instead decided to side with the Kuei Jin themselves, they simply meet with Ming Zhao amicably and discuss taking down the prince. Conversely, if the fledgling is simply there to retrieve the key, a fight ensues, and Ming Zhao is ultimately killed before the kindred leaves with the key. The fledgling's next step, provided they didn't choose to side with him, is to take down Prince LaCroix, having to potentially fight through an emotional battle with Officer Chunk, Venture Tower's friendly front desk clerk, and recurring security officer who I've somehow unfortunately neglected to mention up until this point. The fledgling soon comes face to face with the massive sheriff. While the sheriff transforms into a massive f***ing bat creature thing, the fledgling is able to prove their fortitude once again and bring the prince's right-hand man down for good. With every obstacle out of their way, the fate of the fledgling and the Ankaran sarcophagus depends on their allegiance. If they aligned with the prince, they stand by his side. Otherwise, they slit his throat. Either way, LaCroix is still able to use the key to open the sarcophagus, finally bearing witness to what's inside. a cache of C4 explosives, set to detonate alongside a friendly note from Smiling Jack. LaCroix then maniacally laughs as it explodes, blasting his penthouse and likely his life out of the side of Venture Tower. So long as the fledgling didn't side with him, they escape out into the streets to either walk alone or reunite with the Anarchs. Watching from a cliffside nearby, Smiling Jack enjoys the fiery display of his handiwork, alongside a mysterious friend. This friend, as it turns out, is simply the mummified corpse of Masquerade, the One-Eyed King. Jack, as it turns out, staged the entire ordeal with the Ankaran sarcophagus, swapping the body with C4 effectively as a Trojan horse to take out Sebastian LaCroix. The pair are then joined by a third figure, the mysterious cab driver, who states that wherever we go, it is the blood of Cain which makes our fate. He then wishes the new vampire farewell. If the fledgling sided with Ming Zhao, they instead return the retrieved sarcophagus to the Kuei Jin, who introduce Prince LaCroix to final death. Their new allegiance quickly turns sour as Ming Zhao reveals that she has one kindred left to take care of, the fledgling who just helped her. Her men then strap the fledgling to the sarcophagus before dumping it into the Pacific Ocean, abandoning both of them to the depths where California's kindred can never find either. In one final possible fate, the fledgling can go over everyone's heads and side with the Camarilla directly, working with Maximilian Strauss to overthrow Prince LaCroix. After defeating Ming Zhao, retrieving the key, and taking out the sheriff, Strauss arrives with the Camarilla to take LaCroix into custody and retrieve the Ankaran sarcophagus. Fearing whatever power lies inside, Strauss has the sarcophagus stashed away in an unknown warehouse, to be forgotten but never gone. Regardless of what outcome befalls the fledgling vampire of Los Angeles, the Camarilla suffers a massive blow, and our story takes a rest for over a decade. Years later, in the power vacuum left by LaCroix's explosive exit, a new group of anarchs find themselves trying to survive amidst the chaos. We meet Jasper, a Nosferatu information broker, Victor Temple, a Ventru with ambitions of becoming a baron, Nellie G, a socialite Toreador, and Annabelle, a Bruja who's all action. A seemingly simple problem with a poacher on their turf spirals into something much bigger, forcing them to form a coterie, or group of vampires aligned under a common goal. They quickly find themselves dealing with werewolves, thin-blood vampire communities, and the lingering remnants of other clans, all while trying to carve out a piece of the city for themselves. Their actions soon get them noticed by the powers that be in the Anarch-Free State, and the coterie's growing reputation brings them to the attention of the established Anarchs, most notably the legendary Baron of Downtown, Nines Rodriguez. While Nines sees potential in them, he also senses the coming storm. The Camarilla, meanwhile, after years of licking their wounds, are making a play to retake Los Angeles, led by the ruthless Prince Vannevar Thomas of San Francisco. The coterie finds itself on the front lines of this new war, directly opposing Venture Tower's expansion. The coterie also becomes tangled in the city's club scene and power network, including dealings with Santa Monica Baroness Therese Vorman, who franchises her Asylum nightclub into new territories. Her twin sister Jeanette, ever the chaotic counterpart, remains firmly aligned with the Anarchs, warning them about Therese's two-faced nature. The coterie's fight for survival escalates until they strike directly at the Camarilla's leadership, putting a massive target on their backs. The war for Los Angeles meanwhile grows deadlier as the coterie navigates fragile alliances amongst the city's barons, including Isaac Abrams, who still holds court in Hollywood. During this turbulent period, the Camarilla escalates its campaign. Soon, the coterie's own haven is destroyed, forcing them underground and turning their fight into one of guerrilla resistance. Now fugitives in their own city, the coterie is haunted by both the Camarilla and the ever-present threat of the Second Inquisition, mortal hunters who have become frighteningly effective. They're forced to make desperate and unlikely alliances, including one with a powerful Tremere named Eva. They also become entangled with the growing movement of Thinbloods, the so-called Duskborn, who are starting to form a powerful base of their own. Despite their losses, they manage to sabotage a major Camarilla operation at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, though victory comes at a steep personal cost. The conflict for Los Angeles finally erupts into open warfare. Having survived betrayal, assassination, and exile, the Coterie nonetheless unites the city's fractured anarch factions. Fighting alongside legends like Nines Rodriguez and Jeanette, they lead a desperate stand for freedom against the Camarilla's invading forces. The battle's outcome will decide whether Los Angeles remains the anarch-free state or falls back under Camarilla's heel. In the end, the Coterie's sacrifices pay off. They secure a hard-won victory, cementing their place as legends in the city's bloody history, and ensuring that Los Angeles remains free, at least for now. With that, we finish our time in the streets of nighttime Los Angeles, amongst the frightening world of vampires and the even more frightening politics that weave throughout. While the next chapter of the Bloodlines story takes us a bit further north to Seattle, Washington, despite the change of scenery, the same vampire factions and clans still claw for control. Over 20 years after our first embrace into the Bloodline story, I know that at least I can't wait to get back onto the streets of Vampire the Masquerade once again. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching this one. I honestly really hope you enjoyed it. I've loved this game so much for so long. It holds such a big piece of my heart and it was such a pleasure to cover it on this show. I really recommend everybody check out the links to the mods in the description once again. And while you're there, you can support me by clicking the links to become a channel member or a Patreon supporter, just like the amazing folks on screen, who literally help to keep my adorable little kitties fed. Oh, and as always, like the video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, let me know what you'd like to see next, and by golly, thank you again for watching. Once again, I've been Suggestive Gaming, and now, you're in the know.